Horror Month continues on the Irreverent Nerds podcast with special guests Dan Johnson and Chris Mackey. In addition to catching up with Dan and Chris and talking about their most recent projects, we are going to be diving deep into the world of horror comics, including its history, Dan and Chris's favorite horror comics, and their early experiences with this genre. All that and more coming right after this. I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The
Irreverent Nerds.
Bum, bum, bum.
Today's episode of the Irreverent Nerd podcast has been brought to you by Duff Beer. Don't just sit on your duff. Get in the bar and drink some beer. That means you too, Homer. Nerds. We are here once again to continue our month of horror.
Horror.
The podcast is just so bad that it's horrible. That's our month of horror. No, we're we're emphasizing horror. So we started with a Stephen King movie last week, and now this week we're going to talk about horror comics. And as advertised, we have our two friends of the podcast, Chris Mackey and Dan Johnson, are here. We finally got all four of us together, and they are joining us to talk all things horror comics. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
This is all made possible because of this man, because you guys are connected to us through him.
Yes.
I guess that's true. And I'm glad y'all are here since I have a small headache and I'm tired from work. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to make sure I do some talking too.
He wants you to do all the work, is what he said.
Okay, now you said we're not doing video this time, right? This is just audio?
Right. Correct. Yeah, audio only. Yeah, our not so beautiful mugs won't grace the I don't know what the
I had props, but I didn't want to even pull them out, so that's good.
I put on pants for this, so I want you guys to know how honored you should be. I don't put on pants for just anybody these days, so
man,
I'll be very honored.
Well, Dick Grayson would be proud.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish our listeners could see it because Chris, might I say, you are looking the most professional.
You've got very good lighting.
Very good lighting and
yeah.
and higher quality than our cameras apparently. You got what do you have?
You must have an iPhone. Do you have an iPhone?
Yeah.
Nice.
Last year. I got it last year.
Cool.
I don't know the numbers anymore. But it's nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have a busy weekend planned, so I've been building up to the weekend. Yes.
There you go. Yeah. Well, it's also 3 hours earlier there, so where we are at, it's evening.
Oh my God! Yeah, you went there, huh?
Yeah, and it's daytime, so he's got natural lighting going on. That's always better if you can get it.
We have gas station lighting through the back window.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a gas station behind my or in front of my, I guess.
God.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
Yeah. So we'll take a few minutes here. Take a few minutes here to catch up with our audience. Like, what's new with you guys? Dan, how about we start with you, and then Chris, you can share what's new with you.
Yeah.
It's been
sounds good.
Been a few months since we talked.
Yeah, a lot of exciting things. So,
yes, I'm doing pretty well. Like I said, still working for Fine Art Press, doing stories for them. Got a story that an artist is finishing up. Hopefully by this weekend that we can submit to Ben Dunn. Tomorrow or story, and just found out that I've got a story that I did with Andy McPhee that's going to be appearing coming up in December. It's going to be out December the 20th in Tomorrow Girl number 4. We're also supposed to be slated for some stories in the Superverse Festivus special, the very first one that's been done. And I'm also very excited because I just started a new film project, a new script with Alison Castro, who is one of the actresses from the series I did with Chris, Doc Savage.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yes. We're hammering out the plot. Well, the plot's been hammered out, and I'm working on the script now. And hopefully, I will be able to get that to her by the end of the month, so she can start filming. And Chris is already being tapped to play one of the characters in the film. So I'm excited about that.
Are you wearing a costume this
Yeah.
time, Chris?
Highway patrol, right? Or a deputy?
Are you?
Yes.
If you want to be a good guy, you'll be the highway patrol. If you want to be a bad guy, you'll be the deputy.
Oh.
So there is more white guys in this movie?
There are a few, yeah.
Richard and I were saying there was only 2 white guys.
Oh.
No, there's a few. There's a few.
I'm just saying that, it's like reverse, and we're both over 55. So, yeah.
Well, you got to remember, this is based on a Cuban legend that Allison's. I think Allison said her grandfather had passed down to her, and basically, it's a story about a shapeshifter. It's supposed to be a being that can transform to different animals. It can be mischievous.
Is it a skinwalker?
Well, it's not evil per se. It actually likes being a little impish at times, and I'm kind of taking the approach of it's kind of a slash horror, kind of a slash Incredible Hulk TV series episode where there is a monster, but it's working for the forces of good.
I couldn't help think of Dwight.
I'm more the bad guy than it is.
Have you been impish?
And like I said, there are bad law enforcers and there are good law enforcers, and I guess it all depends if Chris wants to be a good law enforcer or a bad law enforcer. Yeah.
We both want to play bad guys.
Well, there'll be other characters too, because part of the story involves a crooked sheriff that's basically running a small town. He's terrorizing local immigrants that are here illegally, but he's also terrorizing the townspeople as well. So it's a mix. So they're equal opportunity jackasses.
Yeah. Very cool.
Well, Chris, what's new with you these days?
Here we go.
Any new projects?
Let's talk about immediate, but it'll already have happened by the time this airs. Okay. So Saturday we're filming. We're refilming scenes for Doc Savage. We're filming brand new scenes with the Docmobile. It's a 50th anniversary Mustang.
Cool.
That kind of looks like the Batmobile. It's black. I nicknamed it Obsidian. So so we're gonna do a lot of car scenes and some action stuff. And then on Sunday, I have another show. I've been promoting like at least once a month Doc Savage at local shows and stuff. And it's real exciting. And then November 18th and 19th, we're going to the Bakersfield Comic Con, which is where we launched the project last year. Bakersfield Comic Con, if you remember the Big Bang Theory episode where they go to a convention and the car breaks down, it's Bakersfield Comic Con.
Nice. Okay.
So it's like 4,000 people a day.
Oh, wow.
So they welcomed us so much last time. We're going to world premiere the TV series there.
Nice.
And do a Q&A and stuff like that. We're really excited about that.
Cool.
And then one final note, I'm actually going to, me and Adam and our director of operations is going to AFM, American Film Market. We are looking to sell to China and to India, and the Asylum's going to be there. Sharknado guys.
Oh my gosh.
That was my business plan. The Asylum was my business plan. So it's like, it sounds like, but it's not quite, but it's close. You know how they do the ripoff movies? That's kind of like what we were doing, except we did it in such a classy way that it kind of has its own thing now. But yeah, so we got a little bit on the plate. We're doing all right.
Nice.
No, I found out I can't come to the premiere. I just need to get a ride. Somebody can come by and pick me up.
I know. I was gonna pick you up. But evidently I'm taking the Greyhound, so that's gonna be a little awkward. I'd like to do Amtrak, Dan.
I got $20 for gas.
Yeah. It's a little high right now. So hey, okay, how about this? In California, gas is from 5.85 to 6.
Ooh.
Ooh.
How you
cut-
guys doing?
Oh, yeah, we got it easy compared to you guys. I think
I think as low as like 329 here.
I saw it.
Oh,
in,
you suck.
I saw it for
That-
315 in
don't-
Greensboro yesterday.
Liar. Liar.
I think you're cutting
Liars.
out
Liars.
a little, Chris. Did you hear that?
Lying.
Richard?
It's it's more of like when multiple people are trying to talk.
Oh, okay.
I still say I've been telling Chris, you guys can back me up on this. North Carolina would be a great place to move to and make movies at, because trust me,
Hey,
you guys would do.
Yeah, Wilmington.
I'll cast you, Chris, as the Mothman.
There you go. It was a goal.
So,
You've always
list,
wanted to play
list.
the Mothman.
California.
That's interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
when we do the premiere, if you'll bring your laptop, I will be happy to like log in and at least say hello to everybody from here in North Carolina.
Well, yeah, we're gonna figure out some stuff.
Cool.
That's like AFM. We're gonna take a laptop and a what's the other thing? What's the little small computer thingy?
The calculator.
Oh, the iPad?
Yes, we're gonna take an iPad and a laptop because we want to show quite a bit, and we want to show them all the websites and stuff. We've been doing a lot of publicity, so we want to show them what we're trying to do.
Well, I was gonna say Allison's mentioned about coming out to California. I thought she was talking originally about coming to Georgia.
Yeah.
Her and her family moved in Georgia, and she's waiting until she moved to Georgia to shoot. But now I guess she's going to shoot in California first. And
Dan, she just went in the hospital again about an hour ago.
Oh
gosh, I am so sorry to hear that.
It's side effects of MS, you guys, and it hits her. She's got 4 kids. It hits her so strong. It's just like a shooting pain from like head to toe on her left hand side.
Whoa.
It's really bad. Yeah,
that sucks.
So, but she's so cool, But I mean that she's in there like once a month almost. Yeah, I go, how are you gonna do that movie now? It's like,
we'll get it
show rally.
We'll get by hook or by crook. We're gonna make it. So
yeah.
I wonder too, because I can tell just how she's talking, how excited she is by this.
It's her heart. I mean, it's her thing.
Yeah, she's excited about it the way you were about Doc, and that's what makes me excited about it.
I agree. I can't say the title, but I love the idea so much. And then Richard and I are going, yeah, let's play the white guys. and then you said they were bad guys. I'm like, whatever.
White guy number 2.
Right.
Well, I did make one of the bad guys Hispanic. And I told Allison, as far as casting goes for the bad guys, you can have white guys, you can have black guys, Hispanic guys. It doesn't matter. I mean,
she said the Highway Patrol was the only white guys. So I don't know what you're talking about, deputies.
Well, I haven't seen too many non-white. Granted, I don't get pulled over that often. So when I have gotten pulled over, it's always been a white man.
But when I do get pulled over,
I may not get pulled over very often.
I don't like
when I do. It's a white man.
See, I thought we were going to talk about horror comics, and then you go off on all kinds of stuff like that, and I'm like,
"Welcome to Rubber."
Yeah,
I've never gotten pulled over. I've never gotten a ticket.
We're here to talk about horror comics
since I was 40.
For any law enforcement that's listening, I am Dan Johnson. I support you guys 110%. You guys are doing an awesome job. Please don't beat my ass if you ever pull me over.
Oh,
you do look,
moving
like
on.
Kingpin.
Moving on.
Moving on to less political conversation.
Yeah. Let's jump into the horror comics. That's why we're here.
Okay.
Plunge into that bloodbath.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So we had.
You know those white guys are always the villains in horror comics. Have you ever noticed that? I've noticed that.
What is it?
Okay. You ever notice white guys are always the villains in horror comics? I've noticed that.
Maybe it's because
1, they were trying to change the subject, and 2, look at all of our movies.
I thought this too.
I'm teasing. Yeah. For my left-leaning friends out there, I'm not as big an asshole as
horror
I sound.
Comics. We were talking about horror comics now.
Yeah,
horror comics, yes. which is a subject very close to my heart. I I love horror comics. I've cut my teeth on comics, writing with horror comics.
Mhm.
What do you guys want to talk about in particular? History of it, our favorite comics, or favorite creators, or
Well, I guess
Great Cemetery plots? What we want to talk about? How
what,
Great Cemetery's plots
do we
is.
define what a horror comic is first, maybe?
Well, I don't know. When I think of horror comics, my mind shoots back to the horror comics that were coming out when they suddenly decided to create the Comics Code Authority and then start burning comics.
Yeah.
It starts there, but
Did you ever read any of those?
no, that was before my time, but I know the history.
Yeah, I know, but there you can find it on the internet.
Oh,
That's what I was going to tell you. What got me into horror comics was Skywald Publications. So when Creepy and Eerie were coming out, okay, there was a company that would show these lurid tales. Lurid, I mean, there was like throats, you could see like inside, that was drawn inside of the throat. They would disembowel. All the women would always get like stabbed in the chest. And, of course, that would tear it was just wild. And another thing is Castle of Frankenstein. I wasn't a real big fan of Famous Monsters, but Castle of Frankenstein was so edgy that it's like, wow, this is kind of interesting and evil.
Well, I was going to say, to kind of roll it back a little bit, but before the magazines that Chris had mentioned, you really have to go back to the 1950s when horror comics were first coming out. And the origin of horror comics was that basically superheroes at the end of the 1940s, superheroes were falling out of favor.
Hmm.
It's scary to think there was a time where Timely, which became Marvel Comics,
right.
they stopped publishing their main superheroes, which were Captain America, Submariner, and Human Torch, and DC only was publishing Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and then characters like Green Arrow and Aquaman were surviving only as backup features in the anthology books that were carrying these characters. And basically, with comic books in the 50s, everything was selling except superheroes. You had Western books, you had military books, you had romance books, funny animal books. And the guys who created Captain America, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, were always looking for the new genre. A lot of people don't realize it. Besides creating Captain America, as well as characters for DC like the Guardian and Newsboy Legion, Boy Commandos, Jack and Joe also came up with the romance genre. They were the ones that came up with romance comics, but they also created the horror comic.
Okay.
And basically, as Chris said, back in the 50s, you didn't have a lot of you had kids reading comic books, and you had kids reading books, you had boys, you had girls reading it, but you had a lot of adults that were reading them as well. And the push was, how far can we push the envelope? How far can we go before we can get those dimes from the kids and the adult readers? And there is a wonderful company called EC, originally educational comics, then became entertaining comics, and they were the ones who did Tales from the Crypt, Voltapar, and The Haunt of Fear, and they pushed the envelope a lot. But the artists were so amazing. They had guys like Jack Davis, who worked for Mad Magazine, Johnny Craig, Graham Ingalls, who was like the inspiration for guys like Bernie Wrightson, Mike Kaluta. And the artwork on these stories were just, it is, in my opinion, the best stable of artists at any time in the history of comic books. And they pushed the envelope a lot. They had gore, they had extreme violence. But the great thing about EC is that bad things happened to good people, but really terrible things happened to the bad people who hurt the good people. So there was never a case of a bad guy doing something and then getting away with it. There was always a comeuppance. There was always a penalty to be paid for what they had done. And you could look at these EC books and you could say, well, you know what? They're actually teaching a moral. It's like, don't kill people, and the zombie won't come back and get you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Or
the haters always skip that part, though.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Other companies didn't do that. They were just pushing the envelope and pushing it as far as they could. And unfortunately, in the 50s, you did have a guy by the name of Dr. Ferret Warham, who made a study and came to the conclusion that all juvenile delinquents, all young offenders who were violent offenders, read comic books. The thing was, he didn't take into account that straight A students read comic books.
Yeah.
Boy Scouts read comic books. Altar boys read comic books.
Oh man.
All kids read comic. It's like saying that violence is to blame for video games or to blame for violence today. All kids play video games.
Committed one of the cardinal sins of scientific research. Correlation does not equal causation.
True.
Exactly. And the sad thing is, if you read the book he did called Seduction of the Innocent, he jumped to a lot of conclusions about violence, about sexuality. He was the guy that came up with the idea that Batman and Robin were closeted homosexuals.
Oh, really?
Wonder Woman was pushing.
Oh, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I was a criminal in Gotham, I'd be saying to myself, okay, Bruce Wayne hangs around with a young boy. You never seen with women. He's either Batman or he's gay. I'd make that conclusion. But he also pushed the idea that Wonder Woman was pushing lesbian lifestyle and sadism, S&M.
Huh.
Knowing what we know about it,
he has a whip.
Reader, that may not have been too far from the truth.
The lasso of truth.
Yeah. Wonder Woman is pictured as bisexual in the comics now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different.
Well, I'll be honest with you. An island full of women, there's no guys around. There's gonna be. I mean, we all know women who went to college. They all experiment in the second year. It's like trying. It's like trying. The insult dog said, second year of college, tried being a lesbian, found out I didn't like it. Third year of college, tried it again, realized I was a lesbian. But getting back on track.
Yeah. We won't get into sexual ethics for the purposes of this.
That was like crash and burn.
Getting back. Warham did make that comic books were the source of all evil in America. And a lot of parents that didn't want to take responsibility for the fact they raised little assholes decided that, comic books were to blame. So they went on a crusade, and this is where you get these mass burnings of comic books.
Yeah.
There were burnings at church meetings, Boy Scout meetings, school fairs, where people would bring comic books in and burn them by the bundles.
Wow. Was this around the time that I think it was around the time Fahrenheit 451 was written, was it not? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Wasn't it?
Bradbury was actually a very, very big comic book fan. There's a great story about how EC did two science fiction books called Weird Science and Weird Fantasy. And Bradbury was a comic book reader, and he actually read one of their issues and realized they ripped off two of his stories. They taken elements from one story and took elements from another story.
Oh.
His lawyers contacted him, and instead of suing him, he's like, well, if you guys want to adapt my stories, I would rather have you guys do it than anyone else. So they actually made arrangements. So you can see these issues now that have on there with a story by Ray Bradbury.
Nice. So, that's cool.
They're
very magnanimous of him.
Well, he was a huge fan. Like I said, Bradbury was just one of those guys. He respected what EC was doing, and he knew the art in these books. Again, I can't stress it enough. Well, plus two, EC was also very good about being progressive in their thoughts. They did a comic book called Shock Suspend Stories, and they always had these moral lessons to them. For example, they did a story about a guy who's in Vietnam, or not Vietnam, but Korea, and he asks his parents to bury his buddy in the town cemetery to use one of the plots for his family. And there's a big uproar when they find out that his buddy was black. And then the son comes home and finds out what happened, and he's outraged because he talks about how this friend saved his life in Korea. He sacrificed himself. And if it hadn't been for that sacrifice, he would have never come home. There's another one about, it's a very patriotic story where there's like this Veterans Day parade, and they got the flags, and you got the guys in the uniforms and the marching bands, and they notice there's a guy that's sitting in a chair that doesn't stand up when the flag passes by. He's also got this sneer on his face, and some vigilantes decide, well, he's being un-American. It's not until they beat him to death that they realize he's a World War II veteran that was paralyzed and couldn't stand up, and the sneer on his face was a disfigurement from where him taking a grenade in the face. This was very heavy stuff from the 1950s.
Yeah.
You talk about woke material these days. They were really pushing stuff at a time where it was not popular to do this sort of thing. They were just like, have Superman fight aliens, have Batman fight gangsters, and don't poke the gorilla in the monkey house. But they did. And again, I cannot stress enough how much EC was just brilliant. The best example I can give you is a story they did for Weird Fantasy called Judgment Day. Joe Orlando did the artwork.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it now.
The story is that you got an astronaut who's representative for the Federation of Planets from Earth, and you never see his face until the very last panel. But he's going to judge a society of robots to see if they are eligible to join. And there's two classes of robots. There are orange robots and there are blue robots. The orange robots are given higher education programming. They're actually able to think more for themselves and not just be common laborers like the blue robots are. They're given more, that's the very last panel.
Yeah.
It's not to the very end that you realize the astronaut was black the entire time. And that was 1952 or 1953.
Yeah, that would definitely ruffle some feathers.
That was an amazing move at that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There were some times, maybe it was DC Comics, I can't remember right now, but there were some times where I can't remember who the artist was, but I remember the story of an artist who drew a white man and a black man who are paramedics, and the publishing company swapped the heads without his permission.
That was Neil Adams. Neil Adams actually did that for the Ben Casey comic strip. And what it was is that he had these two guys in an ambulance, and it was a given that if whoever was driving was like the attendant, and whoever was in the passenger seat was the doctor. And he drew the doctor as the black guy and drew the attendant as the white guy. And the syndicate. Neil mentioned this. Neil talked about how this was in Ohio. This was like in the Midwest. It was like one of the more progressive cities at the time, very liberal. And he said the editors were just scared to death that people were going to be outraged to see this. And I actually talked to him about this for an article I did for Mackey.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he read on the riot act. He basically just told them if they ever did anything to his artwork like that again, he was going to come down there and kick some ass. He was outraged by it.
And I had heard of that. Maybe I'd read your article, but so yeah, I mean that was very progressive what EC was doing with that story and whatnot.
Now you mentioned
that was EC, right? That did the astronaut story. I think Dan froze.
Oh, you still there, Chris?
Chris is.
I'm still here. I might have nodded off, but I'm still here.
Yeah, we lost Dan for a minute, I think. But well, I guess while we've got that pause, so to speak, are you familiar with some of the ones that Dan was mentioning, like the Eerie comics or the EC?
So,
I imagine you've heard about them.
Like, that I caught like the tail end of all that stuff, and I was really the first thing I wanted to do in school was be a comic book artist, and like I said, and then that I got frustrated with that, and then I went into publishing because I found out that there was people more talented than me making less money than I was. So why don't we get together? That's where that came from. But yeah, I studied in libraries and stuff. I studied all of the comic books. I was a big fan, because you have to do your homework. You have to like study the masters, no matter what their technique was, the storytelling, is there. So you just have to and like I said, I hated, Superman was like really big to me. And then when I found out there was more, then I turned my back on Superman. and the more was like lurid horror tales. It was like so, 4-color fantastic stuff that I was like, well, I've never seen that before. And Superman was such a part of our culture, that I was used to his maneuverings. No matter, I didn't care about too many like different artists or writers. I didn't really notice that stuff. I just noticed the stories were like a certain way. And then I caught on to this other stuff, and I went, comics, Comix,
Oh, the
and I
underground stuff.
collected. Oh yeah, there's a lot of enriched material that never makes it to market, in a general way. And I'm like, wow, okay, that was really cool. That, I like that so much better. It was just, I wasn't bored, and I just soaked it all up. It was hard to get it because, I mean, the places that sold that stuff, it was kind of, I wasn't 18.
Oh yeah.
But I had to act mature and, buy my comics IX, for a Freak Brothers and all that stuff. Yeah.
So in the course of that, did you get into, you said you got into some, you mentioned, was it Sky? What was the
Skywald? Skywald. Yeah. My sister was dating a sailor, and I had to go as chaperone with her at all times. Okay. It was like a big deal. And one time,
trust sailors.
They wanted to go. Yeah, they wanted to go to the balcony, and and I stayed down below. But I stayed down below with like a family-sized popcorn and the giant. I was not dumb. I got paid well. And then one time, because I behaved myself for 3 or 4 dates, he got me a huge box of Castle of Frankenstein, Famous Monsters, and Skywald. Skywald was off the charts, man. They were doing all kinds of, I mean, they were doing, like all of the women in charge, the vampiresses and all that kind of stuff, the countesses, had all kinds, they had like a female harem and all that kind of stuff. And they would just eviscerate people. They didn't take any prisoners. You got the spelling, Skywald? Skywald Publications.
Yeah, I was looking through. I started with a Wikipedia article just on the horror comic.
Oh my god, it was just, but it. I mean, it changed me. I was not bored. It opened my mind up to like, okay, we could push that envelope.
Oh yeah, I see it. Skywald Publications.
It's great. A lot of Italian artists, South American artists. I don't think too many people in America could draw that stuff, and you don't see that. You don't see it around anymore. I think somebody reprinted them about 10 years ago, but I mean, it was just, and it was on the newsstand, but I mean, when you mix it in, people couldn't see it at first. The covers weren't as bad as the insides. Yeah, that's them.
Does it look familiar? Yeah. Skywald.
Yeah, that's
Skywald Publications.
68 to 72, something like that.
They covered Nightmare, Psycho, and Scream were some of their anthologies.
They oozed, Dan's gone. He's still gone.
He's coming back. His laptop was messing up. We're about to take a break anyway, so that might be a good time.
Do your commercial.
Yeah, we'll have a little commercial in between segments, and then as far as our listeners are concerned, and then we'll be back.
Okay.
So I guess we'll go ahead and do that, and then send you guys another link, and we'll hop back on.
Smithers, who are these irreverent nerds? Well, sir, they're the hosts of this podcast. What's a podcast? Well, sir, it's kind of like a radio show. Ah, I see. Like The Shadow or CBS News. Yes, sir. I think we should buy it. I don't think it's for sale, sir. Poppycock, I just bought Twitter. I can buy this podcast. Alright, sir. I'll talk to them and see what they say. Excellent.
All right, nerds, we're back. So we're here with Chris. So his technology is working. Dan's is having problems. So Dan's gonna jump back in when he can. He's trying to get his technology to cooperate.
Yeah, I'm hoping to hear from him. He had some things to say about Archie Horror Comics, but if not, maybe for another time.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. And we got a few days before release too, so if we have to do pickups, as they say, then we can do that. But yeah, well, why don't we pick back up where we left off. We were talking about or you were talking about Skywall Productions and kind of your experiences with that, some of your early horror exposure.
When we're talking about like horror comics, it was Skywall, and it's like that. I couldn't remember the titles of magazines. It was mostly about the stories, and the stories were so visceral, and a lot of countesses with like harems and stuff like that. A lot of like bloodletting. I'm like gorgeous, gorgeous art. It was so pretty.
Looking at the covers, it looks beautiful.
But well, I mean, like I said, it's probably European artists or South American or something, because I can't imagine anybody in America doing that stuff. I mean, it was worse than Playboy. I mean, it pushed it way before what's a Hustler? Yeah, way before that. It was illustrated, and it was like all of the dirty novels and stuff that your mom hid and stuff like that. It was like that. It was like a romance novel, but with gore. And it's, I don't know, it was just great storytelling. Beautiful. It's so pretty. That and Castle of Frankenstein. I don't know if you ever heard of that magazine, but it was the competitor to Famous Monsters. And cool. Castle of Frankenstein, yeah, they were so edgy. They would show, again, they'd talk about all of the movies and stuff like that, but they would tell you if something was horrible. And Forrest J. Ackerman would never tell you if something was horrible. They would like tear apart the drive-in stuff, but like I said, but they did it in such a cool way. Again, before Elvira, and before, national horror hosts and stuff like that. They ended up, they burnt their bridges. They ended up going bankrupt and stuff. I think something really bad happened to the publisher, but really, it was amazing. It's one of those kind of things like lightning striking. You enjoyed it, and it's like however it ends. But every issue was just so much to absorb. They were incredible. But yeah, that's kind of like where I got started. And that made me want to be like a comic book artist or a filmmaker. I didn't quite understand all the techniques, so I didn't want to try that. Comic book, I could do my own comic book, and then I took a printing class so I could publish my own comic book. So, nice. I would never, ever take my portfolio to anybody to critique. That's like, right. Yeah, critics are not my friend. And I've never had a deal about that. The best part of that was I went to a convention in Fresno one time, and they flew Stan Lee in, but he was only there for like an hour.
Only an hour.
He saw a portfolio out of the corner of his eye, and he goes, "Friends, I could talk for an hour, of course." He goes, "But this kid could be my next #1 artist. I want to look at his portfolio. If you don't mind," he goes, "maybe we'll have time to talk afterwards." He goes, "But I need to go through his portfolio first. Sorry." And he did it in front of us, and he critiqued the guy in front of us, and there was hundreds and hundreds of people, and he goes, "Okay, the guy's good." And I gave him my contact information, stuff like that. He goes, "Wow." So as far as, what is it? Reviewing your portfolio, that was an amazing experience. I might have had a question or two for Stan, but to watch him at work, literally at work. And I
Yeah.
you know, I didn't catch the kid's name. You know, I
Yeah.
wish I could have keep track of it, but it was just so like dumbfounding to see him do that.
Well, who knows? Maybe that kid went on to work for Marvel and you
You
witnessed it.
know,
Well, yeah,
I
that'd be
keep
a
on
good way
hearing
to
all this.
recruit.
Yeah. I
Good
keep
place
on
to
hearing all
recruit.
this stuff about Diodetto from the South American, you know, artists and all that kind of stuff, and the Filipino artists and all that kind of stuff. Wilts Pertasio, you know, a lot of stuff comes from not middle America.
Mm.
You know, it's
Mhm.
we're used to certain things like Batman and Superman. When you can get new eyes on something, be it horror, be it an action adventure or fantasy, when you can get somebody that's fresh, you know, again, think of those countries, their imaginations, what else they got? Their imaginations must be off the hook, you know, because what I mean, it's I grew up on a farm and I would never step outside. Okay. I would, you know, my bedroom, I had the best TV. I had the best snack. You know, I mowed lawns, which I didn't know because I have a hay fever allergy, but I mowed lawns to pay for everything. And then I put a padlock on my bedroom and stuff. I had the best stuff in the house,
Sounds
but I
like my
wouldn't
childhood.
yeah, I wouldn't venture out, you know. My big thing was running home from the school bus to watch Dark Shadows or Merv Griffin. And then I would be in my, you know, my fortress of solitude. You know,
Yeah.
I would not, yeah, I don't do cows, I don't do horses. We had cows, horses, chickens. We had a monkey. We had
You had a monkey. Were you in Florida?
yeah.
No,
So
not Florida. I knew Florida back a long time ago. It was okay to have pet monkeys, but
yeah,
have you
my
all?
dad got it from the bar. My dad bought it from the bar. And what he didn't tell me was you don't open the door.
You do not open
You
that
drop
door.
yes or whatever, but
You
you never
bit.
open the door. And I opened the door and it attacked me.
Oh,
So it was not good.
oh,
I
fun.
think mom made him get rid of the monkey right after. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it bit me up a little bit and stuff. But
I wouldn't want to be if I was the monkey. I wouldn't want to be caged up either.
yeah, I'm sure because it was like a chicken coop kind of thing. Like it was like 3 by 6 maybe, you know, reinforced. I mean, it was pretty strongly made. And like I said, he probably took it in the back of his truck to get it home. Can you imagine? Poor thing. So it was in a mood.
Yeah.
I bet.
Talk about your horror stories.
Did it fling poo at you?
No,
What kind of?
no. He grabbed onto my back and started biting.
Oh,
Yeah,
fun.
he was not happy. You know, he was like, I guess he didn't want me to follow him, I guess. Wherever he was gonna go. Anyway, that didn't ruin me too much. That's like but yeah. What else?
So what entertainment wise, be it comics or be it movies, TV, what scared you as a kid? Like, did you
Was
like
it
being
bats? It
scared?
was
Were there
bats, right?
like
Oh,
in terms of entertainment content, were there things that were like, you know, that frightened you,
you
that
know,
scared you?
to this day, those first two that I saw, the reptile and the Mad Monk. The Mad Monk was about as Christopher Lee playing Rasputin,
Oh yeah.
and they tried to kill him like how many times? You know, I mean that was freaking amazing. And then, like I said, this reptile, this snake lady, would bite people, and that gave them the Black Plague. And then bad things happened to her victims. I mean, that was not, and that, you know, Black Plague was kind of like a real thing, I guess. But yeah, this is all in the 60s, you know, like 62, 67. So, and like I said, I don't know how I got into that double feature because, you know, I don't know. I've been lucky as far as like things I've been able to experience like that. But no, to this day, those two movies still scare me. I will. Okay. Let's talk about this. You're not gonna like this part. Most monsters, I have to see the zipper, okay, or I have to know where the gaps are in the costume. Okay, I won't watch Jaws. I won't watch The Exorcist. I won't watch Amityville Horror. Those have no zippers.
Oh yeah, just makeup
I won't watch that.
or something totally different.
In that, you know, in my imagination, I can take it so far. I mean, you know, I'm not one of those ones that could wake up from like a dream or a nightmare and write it down. But some of those things that I experienced in my mind overnight was like, whoa, you know, it's I didn't swim well, so I was had like nightmares about being in a pool and drowning. I didn't like small places, so of course I got buried alive once or twice in my dreams. Stuff like that. I was like, well, that would explain a lot nowadays.
Oh man, that's something. Being buried alive, like that's.
Oh my god!
Did you remember seeing the trailer? It was a more recent movie. Like Ryan Reynolds did a movie where for the entire movie he was in a coffin and had been buried alive, but he had a cell phone with him. I forget what they called it, but I was like, I can't watch that. Nope. Nope.
Yeah, it's I've seen the trailer. I watched the movie.
It's like no thanks.
So we had something like that happen with one of the cast. 2 months ago, we were supposed to do this finishing scene and we're going to do tomorrow. And one of the cast had a stroke.
Oh no.
And nobody found him for 3 days.
Oh no. Oh man.
No water. His phone had already died, so he couldn't call 911. So, and where he fell, he shattered all of the tiles.
Ooh.
So he's a big boy.
Oh, no.
And it took him about a month to recover, but he did recover. And we're all excited to film. From a stroke?
Recovered?
Did he have any paralysis?
Well, okay, so he's like 90%.
Okay.
He doesn't like to be bent, like sitting in a chair for more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
He doesn't like what was the other thing? There was something else too I thought was kind of odd, but I mean miraculous difference. But now he's all anxious to do the things he was doing. He has a 2003 yellow Mustang that's just amazing, and he hasn't been able to drive. He can't really, it hit his right hand side, and in the hospital when they first got him cleaned up, his left leg wasn't working, his right arm wasn't working, side of his face drooped. Within 4 days, his face and leg were good, but he still can't. And I don't know how I feel about this, but I go, what about autographs? And it's like he really can't autograph like he had beautiful signature. Okay, his voice at first was gone. Okay,
wow.
But he got his voice back. But at first he couldn't finish sentences, and he would be like, you get 5 minutes of time, and then he'd be napping, and now he's almost full strength, but he's like 90% now. But I mean, it's going to be amazing to accomplish what we thought was impossible. I was going to have to use stock footage or something. And now we got him back. So my lead star is coming up from LA, and I've got a couple other people that are going to help out and stuff. It's going to be amazing. This, like I said, this project is just blessed. He was like the only bump in the road that we got, and he's Doc Savage's best friend, the white-haired guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear he's made a more or less full recovery.
Yeah, no, that's good.
We really are too. It's like the soul of the series kind of a thing. He's in every episode. He probably has like 40% screen time out of he's
oh
not,
man, yeah. No, that's a big,
not like a
big loss.
He's not a crowd scene. He's more than that. It's important. And like I said, he was really good. And he was doing, what's weird too is he was doing every convention with me. And they started, he missed a couple, and they started to miss him. I was like, oh God, well, no, he's fine. He just can't be here just yet. And he did his first one about 2 weeks ago. So it was good. And he didn't have to sign. Like I said, he still has to work on, he's got rehab going on. He still has to work on his fingers.
Yeah.
But But what he was doing in the hospital was he was trying to work on his left hand. And they're going, no, 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 no. Nobody told you to switch sides. If you're right-handed, you're right-handed. So that was like a crutch thing, and he was going to try to be ambidextrous, But his right's better. I mean, he does his own clothes and all that stuff. So, they still watch him, But I'm excited, and that's tomorrow. We're going to do that tomorrow. Get him back on set tomorrow. So
nice.
Well,
the game's all here.
Since you're talking about Doc Savage, do you want to tell our listeners about those torture scenes you were talking about?
Oh yeah,
I was trying to figure out. So
if you have a horror element, it would be that, like the scary torture scenes.
That and the one of the bad guys gets his hand shot in it. They did it like they did it like out of the middle of his hand. He holds up his hand so he doesn't get hit in the face. He gets just bad guys. So he holds his hand up in front of the bullet, kind of a thing, and it blew.
Like that would stop it.
Blew out the middle of his hand.
Yeah.
And the makeup lady we had is very good at oozing blood and bodily materials. I'm like, well, that's kind of a bit much. I mean, I'm paying for everything, right? But I'm thinking, well, we could have stopped, yeah. So
it's like oozing for 5 minutes.
The plot of the series is this professor discovers the end of the world vehicle or item that will destroy the earth. So whoever has that will control the world. So Doc and his team want his friend back, and they want to make sure that we, put this away next to the Ark of the Covenant. Make it go away. Yeah, destroy it.
If you destroy it in Area 51, right?
Yeah, it's not destroyable. You just have to put it away someplace safe.
Yeah, we just reviewed the Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and they show the Ark of the Covenant there in Area 51, like as they're leaving. Cool. It's just like sitting there in a box.
Yeah, see, like I told you, my original idea was to compete with him, and now we're not competing. We're beyond competing. We're going to do something really special. Mm-hmm. So hopefully we can pick up that gauntlet and run. But anyway, so this professor gets kidnapped. He gets tortured. I've never heard of this before, but it's a hot knife. Some kind of, you plug it in and it becomes like a fire poker.
Ooh.
Oh.
So he gets hit with that like 15, 20 times on screen. And you could tell, it was like a progressive thing with the blood and the shirt and all that kind of stuff. And in the last one, he spits on his captor and he gets physically tenderized. And that, okay, I don't want to give away the plot, but that
don't give away too much to your Chinese audience.
That gives away a little too much. But I never thought of, the director made him die like 8 times. I'm like, wow.
It's like Peter Jackson. Do it again. No, do it again.
Yeah,
it's not perfect. It's not perfect yet. Do it again.
So visceral. I mean, he's oozing all over, and he's trying to die, and he had to do it 8 times. Like, well, I don't know about that. I would never have gone there. Once, twice, maybe 3 times, but not 8 times. But it really, I don't know. It brings up the quality, but it puts it's not G-rated anymore.
By the way, we have Spotify only shows like percentages, so it says 1% of our audience is in Hong Kong. So hey, you never know. Somebody in China might hear this. We got people listening all over the world. It's pretty cool, actually.
So that's the thing too, is once you give it to one country, it's going to be probably bootlegged forever.
Oh, so, that's true. Especially China.
And that's the thing. I don't want it to
trying to offend China, but
it's
corporate espionage is not frowned upon as much there.
The first day of the show is actually Halloween Day. It's a Tuesday, and I don't want it to be out like the next weekend. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be cool. I want to figure out all of the paperwork. We got it so far, but yeah, so we have something for everyone. There's the car, there's girls. The girls are amazing. There's like a tracking shot of our Catwoman like character. She's like, or Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia. She's like that. Yeah, she's like that. Her and Doc had a thing, and then it didn't work out, but she wants to possess him. So
fun.
There's a scene. Yeah, there's a scene where she goes upstairs and the camera follows her. I go, well, I think I just got my TNA because the girl can walk. I'm like, was that necessary? But whatever.
Okay.
I wouldn't have planned it.
You got your PG-13 rating, and
I think that's solid.
Power of suggestion.
So I wanted to try to redirect the conversation back to horror comics. Was there any other horror comics other than Skywald you really enjoyed?
Vampirella from Warren. It's women, terrorizing men. There was a lot that running through my life.
Marriage.
I mean, I've only been married 4 times. I don't understand the deal.
Well, maybe I like that sort of thing. Maybe I'm attracted to that sort of thing.
Haunted Tank. You ever seen Haunted Tank? You ever read Haunted Tank? Yeah, about a possessed tank during World War II.
No, I haven't. It sounds familiar though.
That was really cool. It's like the sergeant that had like a pet tank that did its own thing. So he would almost like die like every issue, and then the tank would like Kit. It was like probably 10 or 15 years before Kit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was, but it's like, but it was did it so because I mean he would run over and you would see the Germans and stuff underneath the tracks and stuff. Like, it wasn't a pretty picture when he saved his sergeant. See what else.
Do you ever
I think that's about it.
I'm reading through the history here, like this would have been current for you as a kid. Did you ever read any of like DC Comics House of Mystery or Marvel Comics Strange Tales?
I was a DC guy and I don't know why. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe Marvel was too out there and it wasn't allowed in my house. But DC, House of Mystery. There was oh wow, what was it? Who's the one that wrote for Star Trek too?
Harlan Ellison.
Harlan Ellison did a story, and it was like autobiography kind of deal. See, I also like. Now you're making me think about it. I also like Dead Man. I thought Dead Man was really cool. Phantom Stranger.
Yeah,
that was one of my favorite. I love Phantom Stranger.
Yeah,
and I think that's the one that Harlan Ellison wrote an episode, but it was like he killed himself off during the issue. I was like, that was pretty wild. It was like, like where'd that come from? Yeah, but probably like Haunted Stranger would be one of the strongest ones later on. And like I said, Dead.
Sorry, continue. You mentioned Vampirella from Warren. Did you also do Eerie and Creepy?
I didn't like them. I didn't like them. No, they because it's very weird men hosting, and then it was kind of like it was almost like a retread of the EC stuff, like they were rewriting the EC stuff, where she was all about her. Vampirella was like all she owned. She was created by Forrest Ackerman, right?
No, I hadn't heard that.
Famous Monsters of Filmland. That was one of his best financial situations. Was inventing her. She was cool, man. She was a little bit like Wonder Woman, but then she didn't play. They were always like, there was a lot of like tying up stuff and things like that. They're always trying to control her. you know. And she didn't take too well to that.
Yeah.
You know, when you do that, you're not going to make it to the end of the issue. You know, that's sorry. You know, that's just what it is. She's the boss. It's her book. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't try.
Okay.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
So coming up on about 7 minutes.
Yeah.
One question I thought of, like, if you were to write or create your own horror comic, what would it be about? And have you ever thought about that?
See, I tried that a couple times.
Oh, yeah?
My Wolf Soldier has such potential. I learned this from Roger Corman. I always have the covers. Okay. I have a lot of covers from books that never came out. But the idea was so fantastic that we would argue about 12 pages, 24 pages, 32 pages. And I don't have that attention span. I don't want to publish a graphic novel. You know, I did publish one graphic novel actually, but
Cool.
I don't want to do that. You know, that gets into my financial points, you know. But yeah, most of my creations I would love to have as comic books. And I always try to do that. You know, like this time, I told you the Doc Savage book is from the storyboards. They are so complete that we're going to publish the storyboards. I'm like, yeah, it's only been like 25, 30 years since I published a book, you know?
Okay.
Cool.
It looks really good. But the second issue is the torture scene. So I'm like, okay, we'll see how that goes.
Now, you had said, I think one of our previous conversations, I think you mentioned that you had gotten into publishing like during the indie comic phase.
Yeah.
You own some comic book stores as well. Like,
Yeah.
did you get much into horror in that realm? Like,
you know what? The comic books were anthologies. So yeah. And it's kind of, you almost hide that though. The horror aspect, you would have to hide because you don't know the market for sure. You don't want like the cover. They can't have the cover because that would probably ruin sales. You see how I think? That's horrible, but that's true. So I would put them in the middle, you know, and because you'd flip through it, right? So you wouldn't get to the gory stuff unless you went to the centerfold. You know, I'm sneaky.
Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about horror comics. I got a little distracted mentally there.
Okay.
Um,
Vampirilla.
So a lot of the stuff we're talking about was before my time, so I haven't read it. I was just thinking about something Dan said earlier in the conversation. Have you read his short story Three Way from Cemetery Plots?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Uh,
He's so good.
yeah.
You know, he's such a good writer.
Well,
you know,
well,
we're making him come out to. We're going to make him move out to California because Hollywood needs him. So,
yeah, I'll miss him if he decides to do that. But maybe he's got a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, I think so. I was amazed how easy his stuff is adaptable. You know,
I think he was about to rejoin us, but I'm not sure what's happening.
Yeah. Dan popped up there, but then he's not coming up. So but I have to do another segment just to get him in.
I thought about shocking Richard for a second by talking about the three-way story. Do you remember how that goes, or should I tell him?
You tell him.
What is this from?
Cemetery Plots.
Oh, from Cemetery Plots.
So a man brings home a woman to can you hear us, Dan?
He's still connecting.
Okay.
There he is. I see a video.
Can you hear us, Dan?
Hey, I can hear you guys. The computer is glitching out on me because I had to add Windows 10. sometimes it'll go as long as 24 hours. Sometimes it'll glitch out 10 minutes after it restarts. And I think what happened was because the computer glitched out while I was trying to get into the meeting, it wouldn't let me get back in. I had to go back through the Zoom app that I use for work to join the meeting. So, what did I miss?
Well, we talked to Chris a lot.
he told us he told us about was it Skywald?
Yeah, we talked about Skywald, and we talked kind of some
Vampirilla.
60s, 70s, and 80s horror comics. And
Yeah.
I think one of the last questions we asked was if he were to create a horror comic, what would it be?
And then I started talking about your story three-way because I wanted to freak Richard out.
Yeah, we were just getting into cemetery plots, so that perfect timing, I guess.
All right. I was gonna say this is what happens. My comments before, this is what happens when you speak truth to power to the man. She'll always cut you off.
Zoom heard
Yes.
you. It was like, nope. Boop.
Yes, the man is a woman. So
No.
Oh,
it's true. You
Oh no, we lost Dan again.
well, it's close. Oh no.
Well.
Well, Richard.
Oh, glitching again. So we'll try one more short segment. And we're gonna pause for now. Nerds, we would love to find out who is on the other side of the microphone. There are multiple options by which you can connect with us. Our Instagram handle is @irreverent_nerds. We are on Facebook and YouTube as simply the Irreverent Nerds. Makes sense, right? And of course, we are on your podcast app. If you listen on Spotify, scroll down and you will see a question. What did you think of this episode? We welcome your feedback. We post episode-specific polls and questions from time to time on Spotify, so please feel free to jump in there and give us your 2 cents. All right, nerds, I've talked enough. Let's get back to this week's episode. Hey guys, so we are back again. We're recording a kind of a pickup here with Dan. We were finally able to get him back on, so fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Keep working.
All your fingers and your toes.
So Chris had to leave, so it's just us and Dan. And Chris had his segment, so now Dan, you get yours. So you want to talk some about your horror comic writing experiences and publishing?
Sure. Well, like I said before, I've always been a big horror fan. Like I said, I was a huge fan of DC Comics. I was a big fan of the Charlton horror comic books that came out in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And DC, House of Mystery, Tales of the Unexpected, comics like that. I was a big fan of those. And like I said, I've been a big horror fan all my life. And with Cemetery Plots, it started as a group effort with a company it was a little group we got together called Empire Comics Lab. And what happened is that we were a group of comic book writers and artists that wanted to get together. Bill Nichols challenged us, basically, make comic books. You're sitting around, you're griping on Facebook about how you can't get published. So he challenged us, make comics. So what happened is that we went out there and we decided we were going to put a book out, but we were unsure about what book we should do. What should we do? We all agreed it should be an anthology. We had some artists that were really good, but they weren't what you'd call they weren't interested in doing superhero stuff. There were a lot of artists that want to do science fiction, some want to do horror, and some of them had styles that were a little bit better suited to horror. So a buddy of mine, Steve Casper, who was my collaborator on my first story for Cemetery Plots, and also the co-creator of D.O. Man, he contacted me and he said, we need to show him how this would work, what a horror story would look like with a host. And what happened was that I pitched him a story called Three-Way, and it was a quick 3-page story. Steve was able to do it in no time. We were able to show people, and from there, people got the idea of what we wanted to do. So I told folks I had some other stories I'd be willing to send them if they wanted to give it a try. And we invited other writers to submit stories. And it kind of fell on me to become the editor because I had an idea of what I wanted to do for the comic. We were getting pitches like science fiction stories, where we're getting these little funny vignettes, which didn't really have a lot of horror elements to it.
Mm.
And I kind of stepped in and I said, well, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. It can't be a mishmash. It can't just be whatever we get. We really have to put our nose to the grindstone and come up with some really good stories. So I basically put a challenge out there. I think I got a little frustrating because I know a few writers pitched me ideas, and I would come back and I'd say, well, we can't really use this story because you can see the ending coming a mile away. We can't use that story because there's holes in logic. And we can't use this story because it's a 32-page comic book, and this is going to take about 80 pages to tell your story. That's just not going to work.
Hey, so, Dan. Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
And he's a demon.
And he's a demon, yes.
Sorry.
That's a private little joke that we have. One of the guys
inside jokes.
Well, one of the guys kept pitching stories, and no matter what the story was, the ending was always, and he's a demon. He's a devil. I had one guy pitch a story, and he wanted to do this story about this loser that goes in and like shoots up his high school dance, and I'm like,
ooh. Oh no, yeah, nope.
Yeah, I'm like,
no.
what? Where's the horror at? And it's like, well, he's getting back at people. And it's like, first of all, seek psychiatric help.
Yes.
Second of all, this falls under the category of EC Comics, where it's like, bad things can happen to good people, but really terrible things have to happen to even worse people. So yeah, innocent people are going to get hurt in horror comics. That's what makes horror horrible. But at the end of the day, you have to have a comeuppance. You've got to have something where somebody pays a penalty for what they've done. And Three-Way was exactly that kind of story. I wish we could have done the original story. The original story was going to have some flashbacks. Do you want to spoil the story, or have you told Richard the story, what it's about?
No.
He was getting ready to tell it earlier, or to joke about it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. If you've never read Cemetery Plots #1, turn off the podcast at this time because there are going to be spoilers. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You got an extra second there. Okay. The original story was going to be about a prostitute that gets hired by this guy to help spice up his marriage. What happens is that the original flashbacks were going to show this was not a very nice lady. She was a very, very rotten to the core type of person. And she was basically looking to take the schlub for everything he was worth. This guy, I described him to the artist, and Steve nailed him perfectly. This guy was like mid-40s, overweight, balding, glasses, very nebbish type of guy. He was very, very nerdy, very quiet. And what happens is that the twist comes at the end when the prostitute meets the guy's wife, who it turns out to has been dead for several years. And you can kind of take it from there. What happens is that she ends up getting poisoned by this guy because his wife would be very jealous if he did anything with a living partner.
So she becomes a ghost towards the end. Ish.
Not a ghost. You've heard that expression about she just kind of lays there?
We need to explain necro attraction to you, Richard.
Oh. Yeah, that would definitely fit in the horror realm.
Yeah.
No, I have heard of some people that, well, yeah, they also need psychiatric help.
Yes, they do.
I've actually gotten some flack about this story, and I tell people it's actually based on a real case. There was a story, I believe it was in Mexico, there was a guy that wanted to marry this woman who was like 40 years younger than he was, and he was willing to like pay the family to let him marry her, but she ended up dying before they could be married. But he ended up digging up the body and
Oh
actually
no.
kept it preserved for like 7 years.
Oh, this is like spoiler warning for Psycho if you haven't anyone who hasn't seen it yet. But yeah, it's kind of like makes me think of Psycho, where you keeping his mom preserved down in the basement.
But again, the story was going to be that basically this guy lost his wife and couldn't accept reality. He couldn't accept the fact that his wife was dead, so he basically went out there, dug her up. But even in a marriage like that, spark is gone, so you got to spice things up a little bit.
Mm.
We have gotten a little flack about that one.
Yeah.
I figured it would set the tone because, like I said, we didn't show anything. There's nothing in there shown. All of it's implied.
Right.
But I figured it would set the tone for what we wanted to do. I figured it's something where
Something
we're not
edgy.
going to show anything graphic on there. I remember talking to a few artists. I said, if you can, try to avoid like nudity. Try to avoid any really heavy profanity. And if there's going to be gore, it really has to sell the story.
That's sort of the plot. Yeah.
Exactly. I gave him the rule of. I may have mentioned this before. I gave him the rule of my favorite G-rated movie of all time. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys the story about my favorite G-rated movie or not.
I can't remember.
Okay. My favorite G-rated movie has a scene. It has a scene with the lead character being shot on screen. You actually see blood. You've got a scene where you've got there's 2 scenes of rear male nudity.
Oh, is this the Planet of the Apes?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay,
right.
okay.
I remember now.
Yeah, I think you have talked about that before.
It's the whole thing about what's shocking and what's gratuitous. It's like what you cut out of the story and still have it have an impact, as opposed to I just want to write a story where a guy goes in and shoots up his high school prom because I couldn't get to high school and couldn't get a date, so I want my revenge of my old classmates. That kind of thing. So it was a challenge. It was a challenge to come up with what we would consider to be good horror, not just shock value. And I got to admit, I'm very proud of the 3 issues we did, and 4 issues. We actually did 4, which unfortunately, because of Empire Comics Lab kind of dissolving, it's been in limbo. Although we're talking now about sending those to Anarch Press's horror comics.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to admit, we might have talked about it. I can't remember, but I was wondering what happened to Empire Comics Lab because I know I hadn't heard any activity in a long time.
Well, I got busy. Actually, Empire Comics Lab and Cemetery Plots actually opened the door for me in a couple of places.
Yeah.
Because of Cemetery Plots, I got invited to write for William Mull's Forbidden Gallery, and really happy about that because the artist, I'm trying to remember the artist's name, who did my first story for him for Forbidden Gallery #4. He's the artist. He works with the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate, doing like Tarzan comic strips and such. Great artist. And I'm waiting for issue #6 to come out because Dan Day, the brother of Gene Day, did the artwork for it, and very happy about that. Nice. And like I said, right now we're also pitching some more stuff to AP's horror comics. So hopefully,
cool.
We're going to hear about that soon.
So you? Oh, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to answer your question about Empire Comics Lab, I think we just kind of I got busy elsewhere, and folks like Andy Cordy and a couple of the other artists I ended up taking with me. I said, if you guys want to work with me on some other projects, by all means, come work with me here. And then, like I said, Will joined us. He did coloring for Cemetery Plots #2, one of the stories I did. And then he's been doing some work with us. He's colored a couple of stories for us that we pitched to Planet Comics, and the Penguina crossover, which we got our character Hip Hop. We're hopefully going to get that submitted soon. So
great.
I think what happened was it was just a case of those who really wanted to do this got off their butts and did it, and the folks who wanted to keep making excuses just kept making excuses. Funny, Cemetery Plots #4 actually came about during the pandemic and during COVID, and Steve Casper had been busy with some other work, and he had kind of had a lull because of COVID. He actually came back to do another story for us, and it really was a case of you're shut down for almost a year. You're getting free money from the government. You've got no excuses. If you want to make comic books, now is your time to do it.
Yeah.
And it really was the rubber hitting the road, and we really found out the ones who really wanted to do this, and the ones who just wanted to sit around and keep making excuses. And I don't want to sound harsh about it, but
Yeah,
it really proved who was in it, who really had skin in the game.
I remember that's when this isn't horror comic stuff though, but that's when things changed for me. I got in a commission to do a Christian comic about Benaiah from the Old Testament. It took me a whole year to make the darn thing, but I can't remember. Anyway, on my Facebook it says that I'm no longer working with Empire Comics Lab, but if that changes, I can just click that to present. But we formed Redline Comic Studio, and that's been renamed Horai. What was the new name again?
Horikora Comic Studio.
Yeah,
which translates to scary horror.
And that would be perfect if we could make some horror comics under that label.
Well, Kevin Halter, my partner, and I, one of my partners, it's Kevin Halter and Dan Gorman. We kind of started the studio for the Blonde Shell series that we pitched to AP, the Anarch Press again. And we originally went with Shockwave Studios, and we found out there was a company called Shockwave Studios that published in the 90s. And Kevin came up with Redline, and then we checked and found out there had been a Redline for like about 4 months.
Only 4 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They only did like about 2 or 3 comics, I think, that spanned about 4 months. And then Kevin and I were sitting around, and I said, I want to bring like a manga feel to some of these books in terms of how we tell stories. And I may have mentioned this before. I'm a huge comics fan. I love comics. I always have. And it breaks my heart to see what's happening with the industry today. The industry, DC and Marvel, are just it's like they're pouring gasoline on the fire to just burn the sucker down as fast as they can. And I always tell people, if you want to see really good comics, the manga is where you got to go. This is where manga and indies. This is where you're getting writers and artists that are actually telling stories and not just pumping out, crap just to keep the IPs in business. But really, I've gone down the manga rabbit hole over the last few years, and I'm just very impressed with a lot of the storytelling that I've seen there. And I said, I told Kevin, I want to bring that kind of sensibility to the stuff we do. I said, I want to start playing the long game, which it sounds kind of weird. A lot of comic book companies now, they write for trades. They want to have like 5 issues they can put together as a trade. With manga, you've got elements that will be introduced in an early chapter and it won't pay off until like 15 or 20 chapters down the road.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to start dropping little hints about what's going to be coming ahead. And I want to be able to, do these as like collected volumes. And anyway, we were playing around with names, and I said, why don't we give ourselves a Japanese sounding name? And that's how Core Horror began. So
nice.
So did you have any manga horror comic recommendations?
I am actually starting to track down some of the manga stuff now. It's there's a Ghost Stories thing that I missed an opportunity to pick up not too long ago. My thing is I'm actually catching up on My Hero Academia because I'm reading My Hero Academia. I can actually show you some of the stuff I'm reading now. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not really familiar with the horror genre in Japan right now. I
The
think
horror,
most of what's coming to America seems to be Shonen Jump and things like that.
it's a little bit hard to get a hold of. You can actually do better getting a hold of Japanese horror films. And
Oh, right.
Mhm.
Japanese horror films are fantastic. I think I first got exposed to those at the Nevermore Film Festival around 2002. That's where I saw Battle Royale, which if you've ever seen Hunger Games.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically Hunger Games ripped off Battle Royale. Japanese did it much.
So the book ripped off the movie, and then the book that ripped off the movie became, or did Battle Royale rip off the book? I guess which came first?
I think the book ripped off Battle Royale. Of course, Battle Royale, you couldn't find this film for like 15 years in the United States. It came out in like 2000, right after Columbine.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
the story is that the Japanese government, to curtail juvenile delinquency, has passed the Battle Royale Act. Basically, what it is that you are with your same class from the time you enter grade school up until the time you graduate high school.
Mhm.
Any infraction by any student gets your class into the lottery.
Ooh.
You could have a whole classroom of juvenile delinquents that get put in there like 100 times a day, and you have one class where one kid breaks a rule, but that happens to be the one thing that gets pulled where your class gets picked.
Oh.
And the thing is that basically it's try to keep them in control as much as humanly possible, so they won't break the law. And the thing is it goes from all the way up from like grade school up until high school. And in the movie, it's a group of ninth graders are basically taken to an island, and they're told you got 72 hours. Only one person gets to walk out of here alive.
Ooh.
At the end of 72 hours, if there's more than one person alive, everybody dies. So yeah, it was hard to get a hold of. It was hard to get a hold of that one for the longest time. There's The Ring, which is really good.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a really disturbing psychological horror called Audition, which it's not for the faint of heart. It doesn't have a lot of gore, but it is just so freaking disturbing. You got a guy who works in television who has lost his wife, and his brother-in-law, his brother-in-law is married to his wife's brother. Basically figures he needs to find himself another woman. So he comes up with this idea to hold an audition for a wife. It's going to be auditioning actresses for this role, but the thing is, you're going to be looking for women to become your new wife. And basically, this guy gets a hold of a woman who's definitely wiki in the wacky woo. But anyway, my manga picks: Mandalorian.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize it was a manga, or did I? I don't know.
It just started coming out. It's really good.
That's cool.
Really fantastic. And the artist, Yusuke Osawa. You want to remember his name? Okay, you're gonna laugh at me for this one, but this is one of my favorite mangas at this time. I Dress Up Darling. Basically, if you're into cosplay, this is the good one. A lot of good stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you like cute girls, it's a good one also.
I'm not laughing because I don't know what that is.
Well, I've seen definitely that, like, there do seem to be a lot of Japanese themes in cosplay, like when I see it pop up on like Instagram and whatnot.
And then the artist who did Mandalorian also did this one. It's Spider-Man Fake Red.
Nice.
And this is probably like the best Spider-Man I've read in like 10 years. It's amazing.
That's cool.
And basically about you guys have read or heard about issue number 50 of Spider-Man, the one where Spider-Man quits. It's got that iconic image of him throwing his costume in the alley.
Spider-Man no more.
Absolutely.
This story has a kid finding it, and basically he admires Spider-Man, and he gets stuck in a situation where he has to become Spider-Man. So it's good.
Cool.
But like I said, the Japanese manga it's a little bit harder to get a hold of. Because like you said, it's a lot more of the Shonen Jump stuff. But I'm doing my best to try to track it down. So
yeah, and I did start reading, which I don't know if it officially classifies as horror, and it is on Shonen Jump, but I did start reading Death Note just the other day, kind of in preparation for this podcast actually. But something I've been getting into like over the last couple years, like is like at our local central library here in Winston-Salem. Like as you're coming in to the main area, if you're heading towards the kids section, which I do frequently, and bring my kids, but they have a display out there with teen and adult graphic novels. So they have a bunch of different ones to choose from, and whoever curates it there does a really good job. They have a lot of Image Comics publications, so it's like, I don't know if you can call that full indie, but like indie adjacent, I guess, at least. But I've run into several like really really cool horror comics, and even found one. I was trying to find. There was one that I had run into. It was like a really original story, at least from what I've been exposed to, and all the main characters are female, but it's just really well done. And I could not remember the title of it, but somebody had checked it out, so I couldn't find it. But I found this one. It's called A Guest in the House by Emily Carroll, and I think it was like designed to be a graphic novel from the ground up, kind of that style. And yeah, it's basically it's definitely got haunting elements. Like there's a woman who's kind of newly married, and she lives with a dentist who had just moved into her town with his daughter, and he tells her he's a widower, and so she's dealing with kind of the ghost of his wife, and yeah, it's really well done, and it pulls you in, and then it rips the carpet out from under you towards the end, because it has a really good twist that when you look back, you can like, oh, I see the clues, but you don't necessarily see it coming. And it's like, oh, but no, it's just really well done. And I've run into several like that, as well as like Stephen King and his son, I believe, are co-writing one right now called Sleeping Beauties. And I've read some of that as well. So yeah, I found it has some really interesting stories. Like some of the most interesting stories of comics I've read have been in the horror genre of late. I thought that I've been enjoying that.
It's occasionally, I think initially, like with DC, the Warren books in the 60s and such, and even the books that Marvel and DC put out. Like Marvel did their Strange Tales, Journey into Mystery before they became superheroes. They were all monster stories, and of course DC had their horror line. It was a lot of anthology. I don't think it was really until about maybe the 80s or so that you started getting some stories that were being told that were with continuing characters that were horror themed.
Like Swamp Thing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we had Swamp Thing initially, Bernie Wrightson and Lee Wein's original, which was really good, but it was always rooted very much in the superhero universe. Once Batman came into it in issue number 7 of the original series, it was like, okay, we're definitely in the DC universe. Now, when Alan Moore took it over, that's when everything got turned on its head, and it became a full-out horror comic book. And I remember Moore is one of those writers that he's very good about finding tweaks to characters that you never thought of before. It's these things that would make perfect sense once he shows it to you. One of my favorites was he did a story with Adam Strange, and if you're familiar with the character, Adam Strange was this character that he was an archaeologist on Earth. He gets hit by this Zeta beam and gets sent to the planet Ran, and basically starts having adventures there. He's like a Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon character. And it's like every time he shows up, there's a monster that shows up and needs to be dispatched. And Moore wrote it where Ran was basically, it was basically destroyed itself with a nuclear holocaust. And basically, it's hinted that they need new breeding stock. They need someone to impregnate the chief scientist's daughter, who they've determined can have kids. And there's this hint of all these stories that took place in the 50s and 60s. Were they really monsters that attacked, or was it just this fantasy that was created to keep the Earthman happy long enough to get the job done? there's a wonderful scene where he's killed off he's killed off Swamp Thing, and there's these Randians that are watching him, and they mention the fact that he has hair where males on the planet don't. He's got an appendix where they've evolved out of it, and it's like several generations ahead of humans on Earth. And it's this wonderful scene where they're watching him go off, and as soon as he's out of sight, they start making ape noises behind his back, and it's like it's one of those little shocking things. If you ever read the original stories from the 50s and 60s, it's just shocking to see it, but on the surface, you don't think about it, but when you start dwelling into it a little bit more, it's like, yeah, this is probably how they would look at him. They would probably look at him as some throwback that was just there basically for be a stud bull. So
put him out to pasture.
Yeah, and Moore did some great stuff. Moore really Saga Swamp Thing, when he took over that book, it really became destination reading for me. Again, it was just some of the best horror out there. And the great thing about Moore was he opened the door for Neil Gaiman at DC Comics. He opened the door for a lot of the writers that came through with Vertigo. And I think because of that book, you really had DC making a push to try to do more adult themed comic books in terms of more literate. You wouldn't have had Sandman, you wouldn't have had Sandman Mystery Theater, you wouldn't have had a lot of the books that made DC main reading in the 90s and the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, I see. I had forgotten he did Batman the Killing Joke. Now you could argue that's pretty close to horror in the sense of like it's pretty intense. It
is. I've got a theory about Killing Joke actually. Killing Joke was the last thing he did for DC before he quit over Watchmen. I've never had an opportunity to speak to Alan Moore, but I did interview Dave Gibbons, his collaborator with Watchmen, and Gibbons mentioned that after Watchmen was over, he and Moore had talked about wanting to work on a Captain Marvel story. And he said they wanted to do it like it would be a comic book from the 1940s. They said they wanted to do something lighthearted. He said they also wanted to be like a fairy tale, and it would be exactly like a Fawcett comic book from the 1940s.
Nice.
And the thing is Moore left because of the Watchmen merchandising debacle, and he ended up not doing it. And Gibbons, I asked him what he thought the legacy of Watchmen was, and he said that they sent the wrong message to the industry, that you had to go dark and you had to go grim. As he put it, the story worked for Watchmen because it worked for those characters. It doesn't work if you're trying to make the Flash or Green Lantern
right.
It doesn't work if you're trying to make the Fantastic Four that way. But Killing Joke, as I understand it, was the last thing Moore did. After reading it, I honestly think Moore was like, if you, to get in his mind frame, I think Moore was thinking to himself, if you wankers want bloody violence and grim and gory, I'm going to give it to you. I will give you the most grim Batman story humanly possible. And I think he did that over the top just to basically stick it to DC and say, this is what you want. You want dark and grim. You don't want happy and light. And a lot of people forget Moore did a great run in the 90s. It was Rob Liefeld's Supreme, which was basically Liefeld's take on Superman. And
right.
If you can find it, I highly recommend it. What's great about it is Chris Sprouse did the modern take, and Rick Veitch did the Silver Age flashback stories. So it had two different styles. And the stories are wonderful. They're very good. They are lighthearted. They are fun. And it breaks my heart because I keep thinking to myself, what would have happened if Alan Moore had stuck around at DC and gotten a chance to write Superman? Because he did write For the Man That Has Everything and Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And those are like probably the two best Superman stories of the 1980s, if not all time. So, but yeah, I think, unfortunately, that was one of Moore's legacies was people got the wrong message that a character like Swamp Thing or a character like Watchmen, they can be dark and grim, but your typical superheroes, Superman, Batman, even Batman needs to be a little bit lighter than the way they painted him of late.
So we only have a few more minutes left. I'm not sure that we're going to do another segment. I know you wanted to talk about Archie horror comics. Do you have anything to say about that in the next 2 minutes?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're looking for the best modern horror comics that are being done right now, believe it or not, Archie Comics is doing the best horror books. Afterlife with Archie it's a straight up zombie apocalypse story, and when you read it, there's not, even though it's the Riverdale gang in the middle of a zombie holocaust, none of the characters are written out of character. They read exactly the way they would have read in a regular comic. There's Jughead, the Hunger, which is Jughead as a werewolf, which is also very good. I think it's called Veronica Ella, which is basically Veronica Lodge as a vampire. It's also very good too. Plus two, they have redone Sabrina the Teenage Witch to be a lot more. It pushes a little bit more on the witchcraft in terms of like dark magic and such.
Right.
So, like I said, it's not the lighthearted stuff from the 60s or 70s. It's definitely pushing the envelope on that. And that's really kind of amazing that a company that's been around as long as DC and Marvel is being able to reinvent themselves by tapping into a genre that DC and Marvel basically, I mean, DC and Marvel, unless it's superheroes, they don't really want to pay attention to it. And that's one of the things I think they failed at, is giving up on other genres, whereas Archie is still trying to experiment a little bit. And I think that's where real innovation comes from, is taking some chances. And for that, I give them a W. They won that one.
Nice.
Definitely.
Well, Dan, we're coming up on 1 minute, so wanted to say thank you for coming on again. Sorry we had the technical difficulties there where we couldn't be on with Chris at the same time that much, but
I apologize about it too.
Yeah, no, it happens. We've had it happen here. We've recorded and lost things and had to re-record, so it happens.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
I hope I didn't say anything to offend anybody at the beginning. Like I said, as always, guys, these are my opinions. Don't come after Richard and Will. They're good guys. They're only saying
the opinions of guests on this show are not necessarily the opinions of the Irreverent Nerds LLC. No. No, Dan, thanks for coming on. And,
thank you.
Until next time.
Sayonara.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast. If you would, consider following us on Instagram. We are there at irreverent_nerds. You can also hit us up on Facebook. Just look us up there at the Irreverent Nerds. That's our fan page. We have a YouTube channel as well. Once again, the Irreverent Nerds. Nice and simple, right? And if you go to www.irreverentnerds.com, that will send you to our Podcasters for Spotify, formerly Anchor.fm profile, where you can send us a voice message if you want to, you can support us financially, or listen to the podcast. It will also direct you to other places you can listen, like Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, you name it. So, like, comment, subscribe, follow, all those good things, wherever you find us, wherever you listen to us. We would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, nerds, live long and prosper. Avengers assemble! I'm Batman.